Lincoln Park Zoo. I highly recommend that. Take a $3 bike ride up the coast of Lake Michigan to the Lincoln Park Zoo, one of the oldest zoos in the nation, and it's still free after all these years. Berghoff Restaurant is the second oldest restaurant in Chicago, owned by the same German family for 4 generations, opened its doors in 1898. Still serve their beer and stallions, still has the very first Chicago liquor license on their walls over there, yeah. You might have heard of the Great Prohibition here in America. 1920 to 1933, no alcohol consumption, production, or distribution anywhere allowed in the United States of America. Can you even imagine? Westbound on Adams, we'll pass by the Rookery. Check out this red building on the left-hand side. That is a masterpiece. Built in 1886. They don't make them like that anymore. Daniel Burnham. You'll hear me say his name a lot. Daniel Burnham, one of the founding fathers of Chicago. He pioneered the first Chicago School of Architecture that rose up out of the Great Chicago Fire. And this is definitely a masterpiece, the Rookery. 2 things I love about it. One is the street names carved into the red granite if you're passing by during business hours. Keep looking left. You're going to see the Chicago Board of Trade at the end of the LaSalle Canyon there with a statue on top of Ceres, the Roman goddess of grain. Fifth tallest building is right here. But the tallest building in Chicago for about 3 decades was the Chicago Board of Trade back there. When the Great Depression hit and everyone went bankrupt, we weren't building skyscrapers in Chicago for about 30 years, and the Chicago Board of Trade was the tallest building in that time. And I don't know if you noticed anything weird about that statue of Ceres at the top of the Chicago Board of Trade, but she didn't have a face. Just smooth and flat, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, because the sculptor believed that no building in Chicago would ever get tall enough for anyone to notice that Ceres doesn't have a face. Silly sculptor. Up and to the left, the tallest building in the world for 25 years, my friends. Nowadays, not so much. It ranks somewhere in the teens, depending on your criteria, but it's still the second tallest building on the western hemisphere of the planet, just under One World Trade Center in New York City. And you guys might have noticed, they've got a lot of cranes there, ladies. Up into the left, Muddy Waters, and a mural by Brazilian street artist Cobra. Reminding us, of course, that Chicago is a home of the blues. Do we have anyone here from Memphis, Tennessee? Memphis, Tennessee, going once? Chicago is the home of the blues. I'm calling it. Speeding past the Sullivan Center on our left-hand side. That's right, Louis Sullivan, you've heard of him. He did that ironwork that hugs the first 2 floors there. That's form following function, like he always used to say. It was home to Carson Perry Scott for about 100 years over there at the Sullivan Center, now home to a swank new. That's right, that's version 2.0. The first one burned down in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, so that's version 2.0. It was then billed as the world's first fireproof hotel. You probably saw that coming. And yeah, that's where you go to the Palmer House restaurant, asking for an original recipe 1893 Palmer House brownie, if you're a brownie completist. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd bother. That's a 100-year-old recipe, guys. They still make it with apricots and walnuts up there. I don't know. You might spot a pillar on a pedestal on the right-hand side. Blink and you miss it, but it's basically what I'm describing. See that right there? There's a couple guys saw it, right? It's a pillar on a pedestal, but that pillar is over 2,000 years old. It's not been standing there for 2,000 years. It was a gift in 1933 from the Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. So we just leave it in the middle. You ever gotten a gift from a fascist dictator before? It's complicated. What do you do with that? Just stick it in the mudroom, put it on the mantle, what do you do? That's where it was unveiled in 1933. That was during the Century of Progress World's Fair that happened on these grounds. 1933, our second big World's Fair. The 2 World's Fairs make up the last 2 stars on the Chicago flag. You might have seen it around. 4 red stars, 2 blue stripes. There'll be one in front of the planetarium in just a second. Celebrating 100 years of Chicago, 1833, it was established as the town of Chicago with a population of 350. We're almost double that now. That was stop 7 over there for the Fuel Museum and the Shed Aquarium, but stop number 6 was going to be next in front of the first planetarium on the Western Hemisphere. And you know you got to build your planetariums away from the city lights so that the lights of the city don't interfere with the telescopes, right? At least that was the case in 1930. So we got to go all the way to the end of Solid Air if you drive out in the middle of Lake Michigan, now on your left. We got more parking spots for boats in Chicago than just about any city in the world. But this ain't Miami. That'll be a ghost town in about 5 months. Marinas freeze over solid, as well as much of the shoreline of Lake Michigan. All these boats gotta go. That's why we raise and lower all the drawbridges every spring and fall. Wednesdays and Saturday mornings we do it. And it lets all these tall ships back in and out of Lake Michigan down the Chicago River. For another fantastic summer, and it has been a very good summer here in Chicago. Not too many heat waves, maybe a couple of weekends in 90s. That's about it. It's pretty good. But we did have the wettest month of May in the history of Chicago and the Great Lakes, right? All the Great Lakes are now at their highest point that they've been since the 80s. Not since 1986 has the waters of Lake Michigan been this high, and a lot of our beaches are suffering because of it. And once it freezes over on the lakefront, it's a lot of foundations that are going to need work once the thaw comes. Very rainy spring, and of course Greenland.